Hello, and welcome back to Al's Talks and Readings. Thank you for joining me again. As always, I'm your host in orbit, Al. I must say, looking down on the Earth from the watchtower is a sight I never get tired of seeing. It's like looking at a work of art. Speaking of art, that is what today's topic is about. There will be 3 subcategories, but before we get into that, let's first define what is art. Art is defined as the expression or application of the human creative skill and imagination. But in my opinion, art can be of just about anything. Which brings us to our first subtopic. Is it art? Well, as I just previously stated, it can be just about anything. Art can range from TV shows all the way to movies. It can be paintings and online art. Things do get a little tricky when it comes to real world art. And by that I mean such things as buildings and natural formations. If a room is displaying nothing but art, I'd have to say the room is not art itself. Same thing goes for buildings that house art in most cases. Now, let's say the room itself is part of the art or has the artwork engraved into it. Then it is a work of art. A good example of this would be the previous 8th wonder of the world, the Amber Room. But more on that soon. Now, for a building to be a work of art is more complicated. But at the same time, it's not as complicated. Kind of strange. The Taj Mahal, for example, is a work of art because there's nothing else like it in the world. Yes, there is cheap, and I use that word loosely, imitation, which in simple terms means that it inspires people to make copies of it. Another example of this are Chinese temples. I mean, just Google them. They are so unique. Now, what I truly believe isn't a work of art is statues. Now, hear me out. Some statues are works of art, but simply taking a statue that has been remade over 1,000 times and making it huge doesn't make it a work of art. Natural formations, I would say, it depends. Like the Grand Canyon, that is a work of art. But something as simple as a mountain is not a work of art. Even if when you are on top of it, you see a city that looks like a work of art. That doesn't make the mountain a work of art. The true work of art is the view. Now, books are not works of art. Yes, I know. Some people are going to get upset. But here's the thing. Simply putting words to paper isn't really that special. Now, being able to make the reader imagine that they are in the book or can see the main characters of the book performing the acts are a little different. I would call that limited art because they are only creating something that one person can see. Now, on to the next topic. The next topic is Hollywood art. Things are going to get a little strange here, so stick with me. When I say Hollywood art, I mean TV shows, movies, and music. So recently, I found out a lot goes into creating all 3. You have to first draw a storyboard and write a script of what is going to happen. Then you have to find a location or make the location. Then you have to think about how you want to take the shots and record everything. So much goes into them that it could take 16 different shots to make a simple 10-second video of someone getting out of the car. That alone could take up to an hour to make. Now, how does this apply to a work of art? Well, nobody said art is an overnight thing. It's going to take a while and hundreds of thousands of retries just to get things going the way that you want them to be. And even then, it's not perfect. Nobody is born with the ability to draw the Mona Lisa instantly. Animation is also a work of art. Like TV shows, they also need to be storyboarded. Now, what is a storyboard? Well, basically, it's a drawing of what you want to take place. In animation, every single scene has to be drawn out. Something as small as a girl closing her hand or looking to the left could have 20 different storyboards. Why is that? Well, because unlike live action where you can improvise, animation is done 100% by hand. Every scene is drawn out, colored, proved. So much work goes into it, it leaves me asking, how isn't it a work of art? Finally, we are at our last subtopic, and that is rare art. What is rare art? Once again, in my opinion, that is art that falls under 3 things. There's only one, meaning that it can't be replicated. Digital copies do not intervene with this. Is it still in circulation? Does copies of it keep showing up, or is it not made anymore? And lastly, and most importantly, is it still around along with its backstory? Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. We'll be talking about one of the most famous paintings in the world, the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. This masterpiece would fall under the first category. There is only one, it cannot be made, and when it's gone, it's gone. Next is the Amber Room. The lost treasure would fall under the 3rd category. Why, you ask? Well, because it is lost. No one knows where it is. You see, the backstory is that during the Second World War, when the German occupation invaded Russia, or what was then known as the USSR, they had no choice but to dismantle it. The room was filled top to bottom with amber. They had to do this in order so that the enemy forces could not get their hands on the amber. It is theorized that if they did, they would have enough money to turn the tide of the war. Unfortunately, the room was lost during transport. It is said that all 3 trains that were transporting the Amber Room to 3 different safe locations at the same time never made it to their destination, or when they arrived, they were late. And the amber cart, which held all the amber that was only on a need-to-know basis, was completely empty. There's been an ongoing search for any sign of the remains of the Amber Room, but anything that has appeared has only deepened the mystery. Now, what would be a good example of the second category? Well, I can only think of one thing: the Crying Boy painting. This is a painting of a young crying boy. It was in circulation from the 1950s onwards, but quickly fell out of circulation due to some strange happenings. See, there's a legend about it. Hundreds of houses that had the painting in it burned down. But here's the most strange part. The area around the painting would be destroyed or burned, but the painting itself was never touched, or it was found completely intact underneath the rubble. This happened to a fire chief as well. The painting can still be bought, it's just not made anymore due to fear of the legend being true. And with that, we have reached the end of our podcast. I hope you liked it. It was a little difficult for me to talk about. That's why I put my opinion as everything. I love art, but I'm not really that good at it. Once again, all music used in this podcast are owned by their respectable owners. Once again, give me a follow online at Omni Productions 22. Well, that's it for this podcast. I hope to see you soon. This is Al from The Watchtower signing off. From The Watchtower.